How do you know if Chinese medicine is the right system of medicine for you? Maybe you're interested in studying it. You've come this far with me in many videos that I've done. And over the course of doing this channel, I've met so many interesting people, like so many, that are really interested in learning about Chinese medicine, maybe for themselves, for their family, for their friends, and they might want to become a practitioner. And many of them do actually become practitioners in the future. I wished something like this existed when I was studying Chinese medicine. Like, I kind of fell into it in a weird way, and I'm always forever grateful that I found it. But I also feel like Chinese medicine sort of somehow found me, and I'll tell you that weird story in a minute because it is a very weird story. And lots of patients ask me, well, how did you get into Chinese medicine? But like, that can be a big conundrum that people face, right? Especially with the cost of the courses. Now, in one way, you think the cost hasn't changed, because I remember when I was doing my course, it was expensive for the time, right? Now it's way more expensive now, but look, everything else is expensive for the time now too. So it's kind of the same, I guess. But I was had just finished high school. Actually, when I was deciding to do it, I was in high school. I was in year 12, the last year. And I was picking my subjects for university and thinking, well, like, as in picking my university courses preferences, basically. So you apply when you're in the last year of high school in Australia. And I was looking through, and just nothing really appealed to me. Now, I wasn't that great at maths and science. I tried my best in science. I repeated one subject of science like 3 times, physics, and I just could not get my head around those concepts at the time. And maths ended up being my strongest subject in high school, actually, at the end, because I've had to work so hard at it. Like, I got the highest marks in the maths, because I had to really, really work so hard to do it. Anyway, I was told by one of my teachers, don't do TEE, which is like your final, your exams. I think they call it something else now. Maths, because you'll probably fail and that'll bring all your grades down. But that was actually ended up being my highest subject, so who cares? Well, that was just a bit of free information that you didn't need. But that's just the kind of person that I am. If I really want to do something, I'll figure out a way. Anyway, so that's why I didn't go into medicine, Western medicine, right? Because it was just never seemed like that was going to be the path for me, because you have to have like exceptional grades in school. But I was still interested in helping people. I was still interested in some kind of medicine, but there was nothing that appealed to me out of the rest of what was left. So what was left in WA at that time was there wasn't even a course. This was back in 1997, it was. There wasn't even a course in WA, where I live in Perth, about chiropractic. You couldn't even study that here. It was either psychology or almost nothing else, right? Now, some of my friends, my mum and dad's friends, their old bank manager's kids were naturopaths. And that was pretty unusual at the time. Like, naturopathy was actually on the rise in popularity. It was getting very popular. And it sort of like came about that I went to my year coordinator, which is this person that organises stuff at school, to, work out what you're going to learn. And I said, look, there's nothing that appeals to me. And this person gave me these books from other universities in Melbourne and Sydney, and said, well, why don't you look for a course? Yeah, because I was basically, well, what else is there? There's got to be something else. There's got to be something else. Anyway, they didn't mention any of these other colleges, smaller colleges where you could study it. And, there was no YouTube back then. I mean, there was, but it was like dial up really bad. Like, people weren't running YouTube channels like these to explain things. Anyway, so we had never had Chinese medicine. I'd never had acupuncture. I'd never had Chinese herbs. My family was open to those kinds of things in a way, because my sister was very ill at the time with chronic fatigue syndrome, which was also a bit rare. Like, it wasn't common for someone so young to have that. And anyway, so they had sort of explored a lot of different things, and we had become a bit disillusioned with Western medicine, what it had to offer us for my sister, because it just nothing was working. But other than that, like, I wasn't a sick person or anything like that, right? And it wasn't something that my mum would ever take us to. Like, I can't ever imagine my mum thinking, oh, I'll take my kids to even to a naturopath or whatever. That she just probably wouldn't do that. Anyway, so I looked at this book that you could study other things. And I don't know, honestly, I say this now because it kind of seems a bit whimsical and weird, because acupuncture starts with an A. The course was called Acupuncture and Moxibustion. And that was available in Sydney at a couple of unis and Melbourne at a couple of unis. And I don't know whether that's because it appealed to me and I stopped looking after the A section because it was all in alphabetical order. It was just like a phone book. It was just sort of a list of courses. And so then you could look up this course and then flip through to the middle of the book and then it would explain what the course is about. Anyway, I was like, yeah, this acupuncture and moxibustion sounds really interesting. It's like, I wonder what that is. And I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose by just enrolling in these things and we'll see what happens. If I get offered a placement, then I can kind of decide it later. But if I don't apply, then, there's nothing, nothing will happen. It was, I don't know, it was about $30 or something to apply for these things, right, in different states. So I did. I applied for the course in Melbourne and the courses in the course in Sydney, the Chinese medicine courses. I had no idea what acupuncture, I had no idea what moxibustion was. It was in the title of this course, right? So I get into one of these courses in Melbourne, in the uni in Melbourne, and my mum was like, no way you're going to Melbourne. You're not just going to pick up your stuff and go and live there. We had no relatives there or anything like that. And was like, okay. I thought that would be a great adventure and like sort of that sort of thing, but that was not what she wanted. And not that I had to do what your mum says, but I was only 17 and, I also had no means to support myself in any way, probably other than your parents. So we found through these naturopath friends that my mum and dad had about a course in Perth. So long story short, they kind of sat down, we had a chat, and I got explained basically what Chinese medicine was and the difference between that from two naturopaths. And they said, look, our college is starting a course in Chinese medicine, so it wasn't really that well advertised at the time. And if you wanted to, you could probably study there. So I went and investigated into that college, and that's how I got into Chinese medicine, like just very whimsically. I enrolled in that. I deferred the one at the Melbourne Uni thinking if this isn't right for me, I can do that. I also got into psychology in Perth, and I deferred that as well. So deferring means you put it on hold for a year. They hold the placement for you. So if you want it for the next year, you can just say, yes, I want that. Otherwise, the next year it just disappears. You can't hold it forever. And I remember sitting in the course in Chinese medicine, first year, first semester, first class, I think. And my teacher, Wade, he was like amazing. And because I'd never heard any of this information before, and he was very good at articulating it. And I remember thinking in my mind, this is exactly what I want to do. Now, I'm not necessarily going to be so lucky. And also I had put a lot of whims into this thing that could have panned out very badly. Like it could have been just a waste of 6 months for me. I would have wasted the money in the course. I wouldn't have gotten any refund back or anything like that. So that is one of the reasons why I'm running this little course that I'm running. Now, when I say little course, it's actually a 1-year course. So I'm going to talk to you about what that is and why you might want to do that. But really the purpose of this video isn't just to promote that course or anything. It's to just answer this question about how do I know that Chinese medicine's right for me? Like you may stumble upon it like I did, right? Where you were just like, I stumbled upon it and I just knew something in me. I just knew. But that happens a lot to me in my life in other things. I didn't realize that at the time. I was only 17. I was a young person. But now I kind of know, okay, I get that gut feeling. I kind of know that something's right. And I just kind of step into it. And it generally has, for the most part, has panned out that that's going to be good. I'm going to enjoy it. But I have also seen in the course of me teaching, now I've taught Chinese medicine for more than, I think probably 20 years, but definitely I've taught at one college for 17 years, I think, about 17 years. So, and I've taught it to other colleges and I've taught at TAFEs and things like that over the time. So I've had a lot of experience with students. Now, some of the people watching this are probably my old students, or maybe you're some of my, present students that are still enrolled in school, because people do tell me they follow this because they get something out of it, hopefully. Otherwise, it's just like we're just wasting our time together, wasting our mutual time. Anyway, some people just watch it for the jokes. The good times. But how do you really know that it's right for you? How do you know without, like, am I going to waste all this money? Like, how am I going to know? And I have seen students come into a college, get halfway through the first semester and realize it's not for them. Now, good on them for realizing that. So that's a good thing, right? Because they didn't waste a year and a half of it. They didn't sort of feel so bad, like I've committed now, I've got to keep going for some reason, and then not do it. But I also see another sad thing in our profession. I see people that finish the course and they don't ever practice. And there can be many reasons for that. And we could get into that in another video. It's probably deserving of its own video. Why do people study Chinese medicine and never practice it, right? Or never continue on. Their practices sort of fizzles out or whatever. But for the people that do finish the course and they do keep practicing, what I do notice on the positive is a lot of those people go deeper into it. So they actually go and learn other things after they build a thriving practice. And I have seen plenty of students that I've taught do that, like a lot. Not a lot, like more that don't. But the ones that do very well in it. And also colleagues, right? People that I studied with, and I see that as well. So it's not me, the teacher that's got the thing in common. I see that with people I studied with, and I see them fade away from Chinese medicine, and some like really deep into it, and they're like, yeah, it becomes their main career, and they build a great living out of it, and they do really well in it. Now, how are you going to know that it's the right profession for you? So one thing is you can dabble in it a little bit, and I think it's the kind of medicine where you will know. Like, that's what happened to me, right? I knew there was something about it where I couldn't exactly articulate it at that time, but it made sense to you. So this is part of it. So firstly, if the principles and the ideas of Chinese medicine just make sense to you and you're not constantly double thinking it, like, oh yeah, but that's not right. Oh yeah, but yeah, oh yeah. It's very Aussie. But if your mind's constantly doing that, maybe it's not right for you. Now, I'm not saying you can't get right with it or you can't, but there's something about it for me and for many people I know that I don't necessarily understand everything about it, but for the most part, it's a sensical medicine. So that'd be number one. If it just generally makes sense to you, like the concept of that we have to live in harmony with the environment and we observe the environment, and that, the metaphorical concepts that you might hear me talk about on this channel, if that kind of idea of way of thinking resonates with you, there's more of that in Chinese medicine than there is of the sort of, we've got to do this special mathematical equation to work out what's right or not right for you, what medicine you need or this sort of thing, right? Now, let's think about it as a job, right? So firstly, it's right, if the concepts of it has to resonate with you because you've got to understand it, you've got to kind of learn it. The next thing that's probably going to be really important for you if you're going to be a practitioner, now some people, but it's going to be a very small amount, might do a degree and then they might write books, they might go into research, they might even go into teaching. Although I would advise if you've never practiced it, don't go into teaching. That's not a great thing to do. Because for the most part, teaching is teaching future practitioners, right? So you're not just teaching the theoretical concepts have to be like formulated in clinical practice. And this is not the kind of medicine that goes very well without that clinical practice. Like, it's the clinical practice that kind of brings those two things together and makes it come to life and definitely makes it make sense and proves it, right? The results in the clinic that you get have to prove the theory of the knowledge. It's all well and good to read, stomach 36, it does this, it does that. But does it do that in the clinic? Does it actually have that function? Like, is it actually useful like that? So that's part of, you using it in your practice. So if you don't have a practice of it and you're teaching it, I find I have a big problem with that. Anyway, that's my little beef out the way. So what I'm getting at is there's going to be a component of practicing on people. Now, you've got to have some kind of want to do that. You've got to have, now you don't have to like really, really passionately empathize with people necessarily, but you have to want to help people. You have to want to do good for the world. You have to want to, one is to listen to people, right? A big component of it is listening to people. Now, there's some components of the job, let's say day to day, for an hour that I might have contact with a patient. Now, if I'm seeing more than one at a time, if I'm just practicing acupuncture and not really practicing herbs, some practices even may have 3 patients within that hour. But let's say within that hour of time that patient's in my orbit, in my clinic, 20 minutes of that time is going to be probably spent talking. And this is maybe the first time they come in. 20 minutes of that time would be spent with the doing the treatment of some sort. And then the other 20 minutes might be, some of it could be talking, some of it could be me explaining what's actually happening rather than just listening to the patient, explaining what we're going to do, explaining the treatment plan, thinking about what I'm going to do next, writing up a treatment plan for them, something like that. If I'm doing herbs as well, making up the medicine, that kind of stuff. So there's a significant amount of this job is actually talking to people. If you find that really, really hard, you might want to go into more of a bodywork style of practice where there are aspects of acupuncture where you don't talk to patients that much. You may do more treatment-based things and not do lots of talking. And again, this is like one of the best things about a profession like Chinese medicine. You can go into like niche or specialties of it, special interest areas, and make a living doing that. So if you love sports medicine, for instance, and you like doing a lot of hands-on, you love like Chinese massage as trainer, you might have a background in something else before you even came to Chinese medicine, you may not have a lot of talking in your practice, okay? So some people are listening and thinking, no, I don't want to have any talking. So but there will be some, okay? So you need some management of skills like that, but you will learn that in your course, right? You will learn that in your studies. And you'll also start to practice that in the student clinic environment. So, how do I do a consultation? How, like, you have to manage time with people and things like that. But there is a significant amount of that relationship building with a patient. And that in itself is its own special skill, right? Like not breaking, like we're learning what those professional boundaries are, adhering to those professional boundaries, doing, making people feel comfortable and welcome, and so that they can open up about what's going on, keeping patients' privacy, and, all those things are part of the professional relationship. But there is that component of speaking to people. There's also a component of Chinese medicine where you have to be somewhat committed to ongoing learning. Like, you're not going to be a good practitioner if you think, I'll just do my 4 years of uni and then I'll graduate and I won't have to spend any more time doing anything else except for seeing patients, right? Like, I don't think you're going to love Chinese medicine in the long term, and I don't think you're going to become that good at it over time. Because now, what does that mean? Does it mean you have to go and to keep studying in another degree? Not necessarily. Does it mean you need to have good connections with colleagues so that you can talk about cases and get help from your colleagues? Yes, it probably means some of that. Does it mean that you read books or read research papers? Yes, it probably means some of that. Does it mean that you go and do more further study? It would probably mean that at some point. Now, for many practitioners, you can do your 4 years degree, or however long it takes, depending on the year, the place, the different colleges, different places in the world have different times. But on average, it's 4 years, right, to become a Chinese medicine practitioner, an acupuncturist or a herbalist. So you do that course, and then you're probably going to have 3 years, maybe 5 years of just practicing what you learnt in the course. And then over that time, you're probably going to have some kind of inkling, like, I like Japanese style. I like this. I want to, maybe you did acupuncture and you really think, I wish I'd learned herbs and I want to go and do that. And I'm going to sort of delve more into this way or that way. Orthopedic medicine, maybe gynecological medicine, fertility medicine, these kinds of things. So you might have a special interest in something and you might go and do lots of seminars in there. And then you may find a teacher that teaches you a particular, style or something like that. They're all common paths that students take. But I would say maybe you can get away, and it's good to have a few years off when you finish your degree, right? Because you don't want to go finish one degree and then go straight to another degree. I think that's a bit mad, like just for your head space, right? You need to earn some money. You need to pay for your previous degree. You need to start working in Chinese medicine to work out, part of it is to work out what kinds of patients do I want to see. And that will kind of in its way reveal the gaps that you have between what you learned in your undergraduate course and what do I really want to do next. For me, I went to China and that was a massive game changer. Like, that was big. That was really, really, really valuable. And I would encourage students to do that still. I think it's super valuable. I think I've made a video on that before, but there may be other videos. Who knows? On it, like I may have made a video, I may not have. At this point in my life, I don't know what videos I've made things on sometimes. But I could make a video on that, I guess. Like, anyway, why was it useful? Without getting into too much detail, one is it gave me confidence. It exposed me to a whole bunch of styles of using acupuncture and herbs, and particularly Twainer, which was something I was super interested in at the time. And seeing it being used on literally probably thousands of patients, right? Because every day in the hospital, there's, for every moment that you're there, you're not just seeing one doctor do one thing, you're watching many things happen at once, but you're also being involved with your one doctor that you're following, right? So you're engaged in those cases, you're feeling pulses from those patients, perhaps you are doing acupuncture on those patients. That's what I was doing anyway. I was doing lots of Twainer on patients, and getting involved in kind of treatments that I wasn't expecting. Like, one of the doctors I was there who I was following was doing reflexology on rats for a research study on osteoporosis. And I never expected that. I never expected to go to surgery and do Twainer, Chinese massage, as part of a surgical procedure in a surgery theatre. That was unexpected, and that was super fun. And I got to do that like 3 different times. Anyway, so that's that's something you can do, but that in itself opened my eyes into, well, what might be next, right? Now, for me, this is my journey. It's not everybody's journey. I kind of just padded along, singing a song, doing my own thing for at least another 10 years. And I was very involved in reading a lot of books. Like, I've got thousands of books here not thousands, but at least more than, probably, I'd say 150 books of Chinese medicine, right? So I'm very involved, reading books and reading and that kind of stuff. Went to a few seminars. I was basically just happy practicing the style of Chinese medicine that I was taught in school, nothing special. Probably what pushed me along a lot more in my development of Chinese medicine was the teaching and I started teaching very young in my professional life. At a shiatsu school, I basically was teaching there the first or second year after I graduated, and I was teaching Chinese massage. So I started teaching easier subjects, more hands-on subjects, and then got given more and more subjects at different other schools. And throwing myself in the deep end and committing that, look, if a student asked me a question and I didn't know the answer, I would make sure that by the next week I would come back and have an answer for them. And I remember that teaching used to be like, I'd get paid for 2 hours of teaching, but I would spend hours and hours and hours in between getting things ready, making sure that it was, I had answers for the previous questions, thinking about ideas, that sort of stuff. So there are ways of developing yourself as a practitioner that isn't necessarily the standard thing. So I'm not saying, you have to go and study another thing after you've done Chinese medicine. You have to go and do this, or you have to go to China or something like that. There are different paths, different strokes for different folks, right? Different paths for different pracs, I guess. But there did come a time for me within my journey where I got incredibly bored of what I was doing. Now, remember that I was getting quite good results with people, but I was bored with the kinds of things I was seeing, which was just like people. Now, this isn't to belittle people with these issues, because they have serious, it's a noble thing to be able to help people in pain, but it was mostly pain-related conditions. It was lots of musculoskeletal stuff, loads of prolapse disc patients, loads of aches and pains, and what acupuncture is really good at, right? And I wasn't very good at herbs. My herbal practice had kind of dwindled down into hardly anything. I really wasn't doing much Chinese herbs. I was doing a little bit of herbs. About 10 or 20% of the patients would take herbs. Now, like, I have 20 to 25% of patients who only take herbs and they don't have acupuncture. And I would say at least 80% of the patients that come through my doors have herbs. Like, it's only around 20% don't have herbs and they just have acupuncture, right? And many, like I said, have only herbs and no acupuncture. So that's great. I'm really happy with what's happened from in my path. And again, finding that course, the course I did, the Institute of Classics in East Asian Medicine, Classical Chinese Medicine. You guys have heard me bang on about that many times. I've got lots of interviews with various teachers in this system. It's a lineage style of Chinese herbal medicine. There's various interviews with those people on this channel, so you can go and look at that if that's something you're interested in. But what I'm getting at is I found something else that satisfied my interest and my curiosity and sparked creativity again in Chinese medicine, but also answered a whole bunch of questions that I didn't even know that I had, and had cured me of that boredom, right? So what's great about the profession, and getting back to the actual title of this video, is Chinese medicine the right profession for me? It is a profession that's got lots of answers. It's got lots of different ways of thinking, but it also is a profession where you have to seek. You have to look for it, because it isn't just given to you on a platter. Now, you could be fortunate. I don't want to use the word lucky, but it is a bit lucky in a way, right? You could just be fortunate that at your undergraduate school, you had a great teacher. You could be fortunate that somewhere along in your early undergraduate, you met the right teacher who then let you know about this other thing, or you found my YouTube channel. Hopefully that's a benefit to you, or you found someone else's YouTube channel, or you found something somehow. But you generally don't find these things unless you're looking for them. Even, with AI and YouTube and all these things, you have to be open to that. You have to be looking for that, at least, for it to find you. So there is that available in the system of Chinese medicine. It's such a broad system. So if you kind of might be like, yeah, I love Chinese medicine, but it's shitting me to tears, the thing I'm learning at school, right? The way they teach it, or, some other subjects you have to do now that are just not part of Chinese medicine. Like, maybe you don't want to learn how to do counselling methods and you think that's going to be not great for you. Trust me, you do need some. You do need some of that stuff, and it will be useful for you. But, there's a lot of emphasis on research-based learning, especially in assignments that students have to do, and maybe not as much emphasis on understanding traditional texts, classical texts, Neijing, Ling Shu, Shanghanlun, Jingwei, these kinds of texts, even stuff earlier like the Shennon Benzao Jing or stuff like that, where it's like, well, at least you should know about those texts. And I've met students who've gotten to second year Chinese medicine, and they don't really even know about those texts. They hardly know much about them at all. Anyway, that's another video. There's a lot of these things that happen in my videos. I stop myself now from going on too much of a rant if I can help it. But what I'm getting at is there are many options for you, and it is a great profession if those boxes are ticked for you. One is you're interested in keeping on learning. You're interested in helping people. You've got a desire to help people. You don't mind listening to them, or you like to listen to people. The other thing I love about Chinese medicine is it's a bit of a solving of a puzzle. Like, if I wasn't a Chinese medicine practitioner, I think I might be a detective of some sort, right? Like, if, you have to think, well, if I was born in 1905, what would have my profession been? You're looking for the answer for this person. From a Chinese medicine perspective, you're piecing together these pieces that they've given you, and you're remembering things that you've read from different texts and things that your teacher has said and things like that, and you're piecing all that, and it's like, okay, here comes the answer, right? And that's what I mean by you're a bit of a detective. You're a bit of a puzzle solver. It's almost like having a Rubik's Cube, that's sort of like, yeah, you're just like, every time the way you solve it is slightly different. It's kind of a bit like that. So, I do see students struggle with that. And I used to struggle with that at the start, because I think, how am I going to get this solved in the 20 minutes that the patient is here before the next one comes in? But you get better and better at that. And if you enjoy that process, there's a way through that. And then that, especially if a patient comes back in. Now, this is the other thing that's great about this profession. And I don't know if other healthcare professions have this. I would hazard a guess they probably don't have. I don't want to say this like, oh, we're the only ones that get results. But it's a lovely job because people generally are getting better, right? I don't have that many days where I go home and I think, oh man, I just don't know what to do. This person's like so unwell, nothing happened. Now you do have days like that, and I do have patients like that. I don't fix everybody. That's not what I'm saying. But for the most part, people are getting better. They're very happy with you. You're the last resort in many cases because it's just the way that it is. Like in Australia, Chinese medicine is not top of mind for people when they get sick. They go to Western medicine, they go physiotherapy, they go to a chiropractor. They might even go to a naturopath before they come to the next, almost, not always. Sometimes people are fortunate to find you before all that, but many times that's what's happened. And then they're like, no one can fix me. And then you kind of, even you explain what's going on from your perspective, and they're like, oh, that makes sense to me, right? They have that whole moment where it made sense to you and now it's making sense to them. And then that's how I know it really makes sense. Because if it makes sense to you and then it makes sense to the patient, it was like, yep, hang on, there's something about this medicine that's right, because it's actually that whole thing is how we see our body in harmony with or disharmony with the environment. You explain that to the person, they're like, yeah, I know, I feel it. Makes sense to me. So hopefully this has kind of helped you realize if this is Chinese medicine is it the right path for me. Now, are you in Chinese medicine for the money? Can you make money in the profession? You can make money in the profession. And I've seen some practitioners do really, really well in it. And I've also seen many practitioners struggle in it. So I think that is something that you definitely need to work at once you've graduated. Don't just assume that you're going to be successful in terms of financially successful. There's certain things that you can do to improve the chances of that, to make things better. And if people are interested in these kinds of topics, this is something I've been thinking about, should I start up another YouTube channel for practitioners? Because that's not, this channel here, Chinese Medicine Podcast, is a podcast not for practitioners. It's good for students. That's who this video is particularly for, or people that are interested in becoming a Chinese medicine student. And look, finally, a little shameless plug. I am running a course, a 1-year program in Chinese medicine. I'm going to put the link below, and no matter when you're watching this video, because you could be watching this, even years from when I've decided to do this course, if there's on-demand options, those things will all be there. So you can kind of check out what's available. For this year, if you do it live with me, there's also going to be group Q&A sessions throughout the week. Depending on the number of enrollments will depend on how many of those sessions we do and where you are in the world. I want to make this accessible for people. So I understand that I'm in Perth and you're probably in the US or the UK or, who knows where. People have contacted me from all over the world to talk about Chinese medicine and to consult with them. I've got patients in Colombia. I've got patients in, someone's contacted me from Iraq, India, and all kinds of places. And some places that I've had consults with people, they don't have anywhere to study Chinese medicine near them, or even any practitioners near them, and they kind of want to learn about self-care, self-help, that sort of stuff. So that's what this course is about. It's really to learn the concept of Chinese medicine for yourself, not as a practitioner for others, although you will be able to have the knowledge to help the people around you, but you won't be a formal practitioner. This kind of stuff will be the same as what you'll learn in school. It's not like, when you go to school, the 5 elements are different. Oh, there's actually 6, or, there's different. There's yin yang and something else, right? No, these are the concepts that are true to Chinese medicine. So this will still be useful knowledge no matter, whether you do that, whether you go and do more formal study later on or not. And it's a really good way to spend a small amount of money to dabble in it and see, okay, is this right for me? If you did the first 12 weeks and you think, nah, this isn't right, you're not going to enjoy Chinese medicine school, right? Like if, you think, nah, this yin and yang doesn't make any sense. I don't care about these 5 elements. I had a student in my class once. This was a long time ago. And he was from a medical background, so he'd already been a practitioner. He was kind of coming to Chinese medicine as like more a hobby, like something he wanted to learn. He was quite older already, right? So he was almost ready to retire age from his practice in his particular field of medicine, right? And within 6 months, he realized that it was too much sort of Chinese, because he didn't like learning Chinese language, which they sort of give you the introduction to Chinese language at the start of the course. And it just wasn't Western. He basically wanted medical acupuncture, which is not Chinese medicine, like traditional Chinese medicine, not proper Chinese medicine. It's a sort of a bastardization of what Chinese medicine has, similar to dry needling, but like medical acupuncture is like an in-depth dry needling sort of thing. One of my patients yesterday asked me, well, what's the difference between this and dry needling? And I said, well, dry needling is like basically like sticking the needles in, but without all the stuff we did just before you got on the table, right? Without the talking, without the diagnosis, without the pulse checking, without the explanation of what's going on. And the choice of the points then is influenced by all of that, which is the Chinese medicine diagnosis. So it's basically like, needling people based on a Western medicine diagnosis, not a Chinese medicine diagnosis. Anyway, that's also another video. What is the difference there? But roughly, like, he had something in his mind that he thought the course was, and it wasn't that. And it's great that he didn't continue on with it, because he wouldn't have liked it. He wouldn't have enjoyed it. And yeah, so that's kind of, you won't know that until you start. Like, there's some things you won't know until you just start. And rather than spending, 10 grand on a first semester of a college, like, you can do it on a cheaper way if pursuing that college thing isn't something you want to really do right now anyway. So this may help you. This may be interesting to you. The main people for this course is people that just want to help themselves, help their friends and family around them, be knowledgeable about the concept of Chinese medicine to kind of live 100 healthy years. That's the premise of Chinese medicine, longevity. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it has been useful and helpful to you. And if it has, leave a like, thumbs up, all that good stuff. And I'll see you again on another video soon. Happy learning.